The restaurant was called L'Orangerie, a place where the clinking of cutlery sounded like tiny, expensive bells, and the ambient light was designed to make everyone look like they belonged on the cover of a magazine. I, Leo, did not belong. I knew it the moment Clara's friends, Jessica and Chloe, glided to our table, their Chanel bags swinging like censers, dispensing judgment. I was wearing my best shirt, a crisp, dark blue button-down that I'd ironed twice. My watch was a simple, sturdy Timex, a gift from my late father. It told the time with unwavering loyalty, which I once thought was a quality Clara admired. Next to me, Clara was a vision in a silk dress the color of champagne. She looked nervous, her smile a little too tight as she greeted her friends. "Leo, you remember Jessica and Chloe," she said, her voice a fragile melody. "Of course. Good to see you both," I said, offering a polite smile. Jessica's eyes, sharp and analytical, swept over me from head to toe. It wasn't a glance, it was an audit. She found me wanting. "Leo," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Still at that little graphic design firm? The one in the Arts District." She made Arts District sound like sewage plant. "It's a great place. I get a lot of creative freedom," I replied, keeping my tone even. My work was my pride. I was good at it. I was building a portfolio that I hoped would one day allow me to start my own agency. "How quaint," Chloe chimed in, a perfect echo of Jessica's disdain. "Clara was just telling us about the gala her father is hosting next month. The one for the hospital wing. Everyone is going to be there. Everyone." The emphasis was a dagger aimed directly at me. I felt Clara shift beside me. I knew this was coming. For weeks, her friends had been a constant, whispering presence in our relationship. They were the architects of her doubt. They saw me as a project, a fixer-upper she was slumming with before she came to her senses and found someone from her own world, a world of trust funds, family crests, and summer homes in the Hamptons. I had a rented apartment, a 5-year-old Honda, and a dream. To them, my dream was a liability. "Leo's been really busy with a new project," Clara said defensively, but her voice lacked conviction. Jessica leaned forward, her red-lacquered nails tapping on the pristine white tablecloth. "Listen, Clara, honey. We're just looking out for you. A man should elevate his partner. He should be opening doors for you, not holding you back while he finds himself." She looked at me again. "It's about leagues. It's not personal, it's just optics." I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't even being subtle anymore. I looked at Clara, pleading with my eyes for her to shut this down, to defend us, to defend me. We had been together for 2 years. 2 years of late-night talks, shared pizzas on the floor of my apartment, of me holding her when her corporate law internship stressed her to tears, and her encouraging me when a design was rejected. Was all of that just a prelude to this? A public execution of my character? Clara wouldn't meet my gaze. She stared at her water glass as if it held the secrets to the universe. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "Clara?" I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. She took a shaky breath and finally looked at me. There were tears in her eyes, but they weren't tears of defiance. They were tears of resignation. "Leo, they're right," she whispered, the words shattering the last of my composure. "I love you, I really do, but we're just on different paths. We're in different leagues." The phrase, so casually thrown around by Jessica, sounded like a death sentence coming from Clara's lips. It was the ultimate betrayal. She wasn't just breaking up with me, she was validating their judgment. She was agreeing that I wasn't good enough. Jessica smirked, a triumphant little twitch of her lips. Chloe just looked on with pity, which was somehow worse. I felt a strange calm wash over me, the kind that comes after the worst has already happened. There was nothing left to fight for. She had already surrendered. I slowly stood up, my chair making a quiet scraping sound on the polished floor. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet, placing enough cash on the table to cover my share and hers. A final, futile gesture of dignity. "I see," I said, my voice hollow. I looked at Clara one last time, searching for a flicker of the woman I loved, the one who saw past the surface. But she was gone, replaced by a stranger who looked at me with a mixture of pity and shame. "I wish you the best in your league, Clara." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. The expensive chattering of the restaurant faded behind me as I pushed through the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the cold, unforgiving night. The city lights blurred through the sudden sting of tears in my eyes. It wasn't just a breakup. It was an annihilation of my self-worth, delivered on a silver platter by the woman I thought was my world.
The four walls of my apartment had never felt so much like a prison. The air was thick with memories of Clara. Her scent lingered on the pillow next to mine. A half-finished mug of her favorite tea sat on the coffee table. Every object was a tiny monument to a future that had just been bulldozed. I sank onto the sofa, the humiliation from the restaurant replaying in my mind like a looped horror film. Different leagues. The words echoed, each repetition chipping away at my confidence. I was a fool. I had put my ambitions on a slower track for her. The idea of starting my own agency? I'd told myself I'd do it when things were more stable, when Clara and I were more settled. I had turned down a high-risk, high-reward freelance contract with a burgeoning tech startup a few months ago because it would have meant 80-hour work weeks and I didn't want to sacrifice our time together. I chose her over my own accelerated path. And she chose her friends' approval over me. Anger began to bubble beneath the surface of my grief. It was a hot, righteous anger. They saw me as small? As not in their league? Maybe the problem wasn't my league, but the game I was playing. My phone buzzed on the table. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Annoyed, I glanced at the screen. It was Mark, my old college roommate, a coding genius who had been trying to get me on board with his app idea for a year. The very startup I had been hesitant about. He was the one who had offered me the contract I'd passed on, a co-founder role with a massive equity stake. It was a gamble. A huge one. But sitting there, with nothing left to lose, a gamble sounded a lot like an opportunity. On a surge of impulse, I answered. "Mark." "Leo." "Man, you sound terrible. Are you okay?" "Not really," I said, the understatement of the century. "Clara broke up with me." "What?" "No way." "Why?" I gave him the brutally short version. "Her friends convinced her I'm not in her league." There was a pause on the other end, then Mark let out a low whistle. "Wow. That's cold. I'm sorry, man. I really am." He paused again. "Listen, I know this is probably the worst time, but that offer. The co-founders spot for or connect. The lead designer and brand strategist. It's still on the table. The angel investor I told you about? He's in. But he wants to see a committed team, and I need a partner I can trust. We'd have to move fast. Like, start tomorrow fast." My heart hammered in my chest. Tomorrow. It was insane. It was reckless. It was perfect. It was the exact opposite of the safe, predictable life I had been building around Clara. It was a leap into a different league altogether, a league defined by grit and innovation, not by last names and bank statements. "I'm in," I said, the words leaving my mouth before my brain could fully process them. "Wait, seriously?" Mark sounded shocked. "Seriously," I repeated, a strange sense of power flowing through me. "Send me the paperwork. I'll sign it tonight." "What do I need to do?" "Just be ready. Our new office space is a shared hub downtown. Be there at 8 a.m. We're building our future, Leo." We hung up, and for the first time in hours, I could breathe. I wasn't just a heartbroken guy in a lonely apartment anymore. I was a co-founder. I had a mission. I spent the next 2 hours on a frenzy of activity. I printed and signed the digital contract Mark sent over. I packed a bag with my laptop, my design tablet, clothes for a few days, everything I would need to hit the ground running. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my gut, but now it was fuel. It was just after midnight when the knock came. A soft, hesitant rap on my door. I knew who it was. My first instinct was to ignore it. But the new, emboldened part of me was curious. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Clara, her face pale and streaked with mascara, her champagne-colored dress now looking rumpled and sad. She was shivering, whether from the cold or her emotions, I couldn't tell. I opened the door. "Leo," she sobbed, the name catching in her throat. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was a coward. I was an idiot. What I said. I didn't mean it. I love you." She reached for me, expecting me to pull her into a hug, to soothe her, to make it all okay like I always did. But I didn't move. I just stood there, my arms at my sides. I was halfway home and I couldn't do it, she continued, her words tumbling out in a desperate rush. Being with Jessica and Chloe after you left, it was so empty. Everything they said sounded so stupid. I don't care about leagues. I care about you. Please, Leo. Can I come in? Can we just talk? She looked at me with those wide, tear-filled eyes that used to undo me completely. But tonight, I saw them differently. I saw the weakness she had decried in me. I saw the fear that had led her to shatter me in front of her friends. I took a deep breath. "No, Clara. You can't come in." Her face fell. "What?" "Leo, please." "You were right about one thing tonight," I said, my voice steady and devoid of the anger or pain she expected. It was calm. Resolute. "We are in different leagues. Or at least, we were. You thought my league was too small for you." I gestured vaguely to the packed bag and the signed contract on my table. "You know, your little speech at the restaurant, it was a wake-up call. I realized I've been playing small. I've been holding myself back, worried about things that you and your friends value. But I'm done with that." Confusion warred with desperation on her face. "What are you talking about?" "I just accepted a co-founder position at a tech startup. I'm the head of design and brand strategy. I start tomorrow morning," I told her plainly. "You said I needed to be on a different path. Well, I found one. So, in a way, I should thank you. You gave me the push I needed to finally start aiming for a league you couldn't even comprehend." Clara stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. The tears stopped. She was utterly, completely speechless. This wasn't the broken, weeping man she had left at the restaurant. This wasn't the man she expected to find, ready to take her back with open arms. This was someone else. Someone she didn't recognize. Someone who no longer needed her validation. "So, good night, Clara," I said softly, but with an unmistakable finality. "I have a big day tomorrow." And with that, I gently closed the door, leaving her standing alone in the hallway, speechless in the face of the man she had created and lost in the very same night. 3 months passed in a blur of caffeine, code, and creative breakthroughs. The shared workspace downtown was a chaotic symphony of ambition. It smelled of stale coffee, whiteboard markers, and the electric hum of servers. It was the most alive I had ever felt. Our startup, AuraConnect, a platform designed to link creative professionals with forward-thinking companies based on psychometric data and portfolio synergy, was my entire world. The 80-hour work weeks Mark had promised were an understatement. We lived and breathed the project. The grief for Clara hadn't vanished, but it had transmuted. It was no longer a gaping wound but a hardened scar, a reminder of a past I was rapidly moving away from. The man who had his self-worth dismantled at L'Orangerie felt like a distant relative. Here, I wasn't Clara's boyfriend who works at a small firm. I was Leo Vance, co-founder and chief creative officer. My ideas weren't quaint, they were the foundation of our brand's identity. My designs weren't just pretty pictures, they were the user interface that was already getting buzz in tech blogs for its intuitive elegance. Mark was the perfect partner, a logical, relentless force of nature who trusted my creative instincts completely. We were a two-man army, taking on the world with nothing but a powerful idea and a shoestring budget. We celebrated small victories with cheap beer and pizza, and the taste was sweeter than any overpriced dish at a fancy restaurant. I was building something real, something of my own. I had found my league. Meanwhile, Clara was living in the echo of her decision. Her life, once so shiny and enviable, had lost its luster. The galas and charity balls felt like hollow pageantry. The conversations with Jessica and Chloe, once a source of validation, now grated on her nerves. They revolved around the same tired topics: who was dating whom, who wore what, and which summer destination was now passé. There was no talk of passion, of building something from scratch, of taking a wild, terrifying risk for a dream. She had tried to reach out. A few weeks after that night, she had sent a long, rambling text message filled with apologies and pleas. I read it, felt a pang of the old sadness, and then blocked her number. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. I was building a new foundation, and I couldn't ever standing on it, threatening to crack it with the weight of her regret. One evening, scrolling through her social media feed at a sterile, minimalist cocktail bar with her friends, Clara saw it. It was a shared post from a popular tech influencer: 5 startups to watch in Q3. Keep an eye on OraConnect. Their intuitive approach to creative networking could disrupt the entire freelance industry. Below the text was a picture. It was of me and Mark, standing in our chaotic office, smiling and exhausted, a whiteboard covered in complex diagrams behind us. I looked different. More confident. My hair was a little longer, my jaw was set with a purpose she hadn't seen before. I was wearing a simple black t-shirt with our company logo, a logo I had designed in a single, feverish, 48-hour session. "Oh my God," Chloe said, peering over Clara's shoulder at the phone. "Isn't that Leo?" Jessica leaned in, her eyes narrowing. "OraConnect? That's his little app thing? I guess he got lucky." Her tone was dismissive, but a flicker of something else, envy, perhaps, crossed her face. "It's probably just a flash in the pan. These things flame out all the time." But Clara knew better. She saw the look in my eyes in that photograph. It was the same look I used to get when I'd perfectly solve a complex design problem, but magnified 1,000 times. It was the look of a man who had found his purpose. The man she had told wasn't good enough was now being touted as a name to watch, while she was sitting in the same bar, with the same people, living the same life she had chosen over him. The irony was crushing. She had dumped me because she thought I was holding her back from a world of success and influence. But in reality, she had been my anchor, and by cutting me loose, she had allowed me to soar. And she was left stranded on the shore, watching me disappear into the horizon. Her phone felt heavy in her hand. She had a sudden, desperate urge to drive to my old apartment, to knock on the door again, but she knew it was pointless. He wasn't there anymore. He had moved on, literally and figuratively. She saw the address of our startup hub listed in the article. It was in the heart of the city's gleaming new tech sector, a part of town her social circle considered a sterile wasteland of nerds and dreamers. "He looks good," Chloe said, a note of genuine admiration in her voice. Jessica scoffed. "Please. He's still just Leo. Don't get all starry-eyed, Chloe." Clara made the right choice. She needs someone established, not some tech gambler. But her words rang hollow, even to her own ears. Clara said nothing. She just stared at my picture, at the ghost of the man she loved and the stranger he had become. The silence in her heart was deafening, a vast, empty space where our future used to be. The gilded cage she had chosen for herself had never felt colder or more constricting. She had traded authentic love for the illusion of status, only to watch from the sidelines as I began to build an empire of my own. 6 months after the breakup, the world shifted on its axis. It happened on a Tuesday. I was hunched over my monitor, refining a new feature for the OraConnect interface, when Mark burst into our small, private office, his face flushed with a wild, incredulous energy. "They're in," he breathed, holding his phone up as if it were a holy relic. "Venture Forge Capital. They're leading our series of funding. $8 million, Leo. $8 million. The number hung in the air, surreal and impossible. We had been pitching for weeks, enduring grueling meetings with venture capitalists who picked apart our business model with surgical precision. VentureForge was the big one, the kingmaker. An investment from them wasn't just money, it was a stamp of legitimacy that would echo throughout the industry. We weren't just a startup to watch anymore. We were a funded, validated, serious company. The news broke an hour later. OrConnect, the AI-driven creative professional network, secures $8 million in series of funding led by VentureForge Capital. My name and picture were everywhere. Leo Vance, co-founder and CCO. Suddenly, my phone, which had been silent for months except for work, began to explode. Emails from headhunters. LinkedIn requests from executives at Fortune 500 companies. And a message from a name I hadn't seen in half a year, Jessica. Leo. Wow. Just saw the news, huge congrats. So incredibly proud of what you've built. Clara always knew you had it in you. We should all get together and celebrate sometime. I stared at the message, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. The hypocrisy was so blatant it was almost comical. The woman who had orchestrated my public humiliation was now trying to ride my coattails, conveniently rewriting history to position herself as a supporter. I deleted the message without a second thought. But Jessica's message was a harbinger. The world that had once dismissed me was now clamoring for my attention. The league I wasn't in was now trying to recruit me. For Clara, the news was a seismic event. She saw it on a financial news network playing on a TV at her office gym. My face, smiling next to a beaming mark, under a cherin that detailed the multi-million-dollar valuation of our company. The man she had discarded as a financial and social lightweight was now, by any conceivable metric, wildly successful. He hadn't just joined her league, he had lapped it and was playing in a whole new stadium. The hollowness she felt morphed into a profound, aching shame. Her friend's advice, which had seemed so wise and practical at the time, was now exposed for what it was, shallow, short-sighted, and poisonously wrong. She had severed ties with Jessica a month ago after a particularly vapid argument, but the damage was done. She was alone with the consequences of her choices. She knew she couldn't just text or call. That path was closed. She had to do something different. She had to show him she had changed. Not just that she wanted him back because he was now successful. She spent a week drafting a letter, pouring out a level of honesty she had never allowed herself before. She didn't make excuses. She owned her cowardice, her insecurity, her foolishness in prioritizing the shallow opinions of others over the genuine connection they had shared. She admitted that she had been working on herself, talking to a therapist to understand why she craved approval so much. It was a raw, painful, and deeply sincere apology. She found out where I was living now, a modern loft apartment not far from the office, and left the handwritten letter with the concierge. She didn't ask to get back together. She just asked for 5 minutes of my time, to apologize in person, so I could see in her eyes that she meant it. I found the letter when I got home late that night, exhausted but exhilarated from a day of strategic planning with our new board members. I read it, and then I read it again. The polished, professional armor I had built around myself began to crack. This wasn't the desperate, crying girl from that midnight. This wasn't the hollow validation seeker from the restaurant. The voice in this letter was different. It was humbled. It was self-aware. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. We chose a quiet, neutral coffee shop, far from the prying eyes of her world or the buzz of mine. When she walked in, she looked softer. The designer labels were gone, replaced by a simple sweater and jeans. Her hair was pulled back, and her face was free of the mask of heavy makeup she used to wear. She looked like the Clara I had first fallen for. "Thank you for meeting me, Leo," she began, her voice quiet but steady. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She simply looked me in the eye and reiterated everything she had written in her letter. She talked about the work she was doing on herself, the realization that her friend's world was a glittering cage, and how her biggest regret wasn't losing a successful man, but losing the man who had shown her what unconditional love felt like, only for her to throw it away. I know I have no right to ask for anything, she finished, her gaze unwavering. But I had to tell you that I'm sorry. And that I'm changing. I hope, one day, you can believe that. I listened, and a war raged within me. The hurt was still there, a phantom limb that ached with the memory of the amputation. But buried beneath it, something else stirred. The ghost of the love I once had for her. I saw a glimmer of genuine change, of profound remorse. Was it possible for someone to grow that much? Could a foundation that had been so utterly destroyed ever be rebuilt? I hear you, Clara, I said, my voice hoarse with emotion. I do. But I don't know what to do with it. You don't have to do anything, she said, a sad smile touching her lips. I just needed you to know. She stood up, ready to leave, having said her piece. But I stopped her. Wait. Give me some time to think. To process this. She nodded, a flicker of hope in her eyes, and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone with my multi-million-dollar company, my newfound status, and a heart that was more confused than it had been in a very long time. The week that followed our coffee shop meeting was one of the longest of my life. During the day, I was the CCO of AuraConnect, decisive, innovative, and in complete control. We were hiring staff, scouting for a larger office, and fielding partnership offers from global brands. My new life was accelerating at a dizzying pace. But at night, in the quiet of my loft, I was just Leo, haunted by a ghost from a life I thought I'd left behind. I reread Clara's letter a dozen times. Her words were a stark contrast to a new message I'd received from Chloe, Jessica's former sidekick. Chloe's message was an apology of its own, but a different kind. I'm so sorry for how we treated you, Leo. Jessica was always so convincing, and I was too weak to stand up to her. What you've accomplished is amazing. Clara really misses you. She's not the same person she was. It felt more genuine than Jessica's transparent opportunism, a confession from a follower who had finally found her own conscience. My mind was a battlefield. One side, led by the memory of excruciating humiliation, argued for self-preservation. She broke you, it screamed. She chose them over you. Success is the best revenge, don't tarnish it by revisiting the source of your pain. This new life is your reward for surviving her. The other side, a quieter, more compassionate voice, whispered of forgiveness. It acknowledged the sincerity in Clara's eyes, the profound change in her demeanor. People make mistakes, it argued. Terrible, life-altering mistakes. But can they not also learn from them? Grow from them? The love you had was real. Is it not worth exploring if that reality can exist again, stronger and wiser than before? I sought counsel from the only person whose opinion I trusted implicitly, Mark. We were sitting on the floor of our soon-to-be vacated office late one night, surrounded by packing boxes, sharing a celebratory bottle of whiskey. She wants a second chance, he asked after I laid out the whole story. I think so. She hasn't said it, but it's there. Mark swirled the amber liquid in his glass, his expression thoughtful. Let me ask you this, man. When you picture a future with her now, what do you see? Do you see the woman who sat next to you at that coffee shop? Or do you see the one who sat next to you at l'Orangerie? His question hit me like a lightning bolt. It was the core of the issue. Could I ever look at her and not see the flicker of the woman who broke me? Could I ever trust that her love was for me, Leo, and not for the successful facade I now presented to the world? If AuraConnect failed tomorrow, if we lost all the funding and I was back to square one, would she still be there? I didn't have an answer. And that, I realized, was an answer in itself. I asked her to meet me one last time. Not in a coffee shop or a restaurant, but at a public park, a place of open air and neutrality. It was a crisp autumn day, and leaves of red and gold crunched under our feet as we walked. She was nervous, hope and fear warring in her expression. We stopped by a bench overlooking a small pond. I've thought a lot about what you said, Clara, I began, my voice calm. And I believe you. I believe you're sorry, and I believe you're working hard to be a better person. I see the change in you, and I genuinely admire your courage in facing your own flaws. That takes incredible strength." A tear escaped her eye, one of relief. "Thank you, Leo. That means more than you know." "And," I continued, taking a deep breath, "I forgive you. I'm letting go of the anger and the hurt. I have to, for my own sake. I can't carry it with me into the future I'm building." She reached for my hand, her face breaking into a radiant, hopeful smile. "Leo." I gently pulled my hand away. Her smile faltered. "I forgive you, Clara. But I can't go back." The hope in her eyes died, replaced by a deep, understanding sadness. "The man you dumped that night at the restaurant," I explained, my voice soft but firm, "he doesn't exist anymore. You and your friends made sure of that. You shattered him, and you forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up. The person I am today was forged in the fire of that night. I'm stronger, I'm more focused, and I know my own worth now, independent of anyone else's opinion." I looked at her, my gaze unflinching but not unkind. "And this new person, he can't build his future on a broken foundation. The trust that we had, the simple, unquestioning belief that we were a team against the world, it's gone. And I don't think we can ever get it back. To try would be disrespectful to both the man I was and the man I've become." Tears were now streaming freely down her face, but she was silent, listening to every word. She was speechless, not because of a power move or a shocking revelation, but because of the quiet, undeniable truth in my words. "I truly hope you find happiness, Clara," I said, my voice filled with a sincerity that surprised even me. "You deserve it. You're fighting for it. But my path is here, and yours, it has to be somewhere else." I stood up, gave her one last, final look, a look of closure, not of anger, and I walked away. I didn't look back. I walked toward the city skyline, where my office, my team, and my future were waiting. I was leaving the past behind, not as a bitter memory, but as the closed chapter of a book whose next page was still unwritten. And for the first time, I felt completely and utterly free.